Good morning and hello from Lacey, Washington. I'm in this beautiful space, Greenwood Retreat Center, and I did my last 3 days Beyond Trauma Recovery program here, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video for you, because I will not be able to do it live for the Let's Talk Trauma Irrational Fears. So I thought I'll record this and I will share it with you. So thank you for joining wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you. So let's talk about irrational fears. So most of the times what we think about irrational fear is by saying irrational fear, we are presuming there is something called a rational fear. So let's first understand what is a rational fear before we understand irrational fear. So a rational fear is primarily a fear of survival, right? So you don't play with the fire because it will hurt you, or a wild animal you're naturally scared of because it may harm you. So any survival instincts, the fears around that survival instinct, we define as a rational fear. But is there an irrational fear at all? Because irrational fear is also a fear of survival, just not necessarily falling into the category of how everybody defines a rational fear or an irrational fear, right? So where is this irrational fear stemming from? So it can be by birth, because there are people who experience this irrational fear from birth. They do not have a reason why they are scared of. Like, for example, I was scared of police officers from my childhood. I don't know why. There is this fear of authority. So that is an irrational fear. And some people, they are scared of spiders, or they fear driving alone in the car for absolutely no reasons. Right? But that's an induced fear or an inherited fear for which you did not experience yourself anything traumatic, right? But then, should irrational fear always have a source in trauma? No, not necessarily. Because trauma is not necessarily a tragedy or a catastrophic experience. It can be a significant emotional event. That might be as simple as you watching a horror movie. You're so emotionally involved in this movie, and you see certain situation or an experience, and your mind naturally stores that memory and creates a protection mechanism. And every time when a similar situation happens, or when it witnesses something very similar, the mind and body, they go into this protection mechanism to protect you. And you may be thinking, where is this stemming from? But that is a very rational fear for your body and mind, though you may be thinking it is not a survival fear. Right? So the first thing I would ask you to consider is stop categorizing rational and irrational fears, because both of them have their roots in fear of survival, right? Then, now, is every irrational fear inherited? No. Some of them can be from your life experiences. So one of my clients, she was abused. And while she was being abused, she saw a wall with painted flowers. And every time she sees a wall with painted flowers, it triggers that memory for her, because in that moment, that memory, when it comes up, that child who was being abused experienced a fear of survival. And every time she sees a wall with flowers, that triggers that memory for her. Is it irrational? Absolutely not. And some people, they can have an irrational fear about cotton balls, right? It's not about cotton ball, it's the physical response to the cotton ball and how it irritates their nervous system, how it irritates them, or how it creates an inconvenience in the body. That is the fear. So can you now see fear is a response to an experience, and that response is being created in your mind, right? So then there is another class of irrational fears. So one, we talked about the inherited fears or fears from birth. Then we talked about fears from your experiences. So you experienced something catastrophic, like say one of my other clients who experienced a tsunami, she was fearing waves. Like there are so many surfers in the world, people swim in the oceans, but even to sit by the beach, she used to be worrying about the waves, and then she had to release her fear and let her mind know that she's no more in danger. And then there's another client of mine who was only 21, and she's scared of swimming, or she's scared of even going to the beach. And when we worked on the fear and the reasons behind it, the story or the narrative in her mind was she was held back from being part of her family, and she believes that once her family is a pool of fish, and as she was one of those fishes, she couldn't be part of it. So it is not necessarily the truth, it is not necessarily the reality you and I can comprehend. It is the reality that the mind and the body perceives, and it creates a protection mechanism for you. All right, so this irrational fear can be an irrational response. And when I put a social media post on Facebook for irrational fears, one of the comments I received was she winds down her windows every time she passes by the beach, because what if she gets drowned, and if the car if she cannot open the doors, so she'll always keep that down so she can escape. Can you see? It may sound irrational, but it is not irrational. It is an experience in that moment that the mind created a protection mechanism, and it is always protecting you, asking you to be cautious, right? So these are the irrational fears. So I'll repeat. We discussed 3 irrational fears. One, which from by birth or you inherited. Second is from your own experiences, from your own traumatic or significant emotional experiences. Or the third one is where not necessarily you experienced it, but because you heard it, you watched it, you heard someone's life story or a horror movie. So you project your fears because you place yourself in the situation and you create your what ifs. So these 3 can be the reasons for your irrational fears. Now, another type of irrational fear can be fear of heights, fear of flying in a plane, right? And I had one client who would never take a lift to climb, even if it's 13th floor or 14th floor, he would climb stairs but never use the lift because he's afraid of being stuck in the lift and not getting enough oxygen, and he's afraid of suffocation. Then there is another person who cannot sleep because she fears if she sleeps, she will die. So she will not allow herself to sleep. So it's her mind protecting her. And when we worked on that, what came up was that as a child, when she was alone and she was sleeping in her room, her father broke open the door and he entered her room. And that was a surprise. There was no malice, no other intention. It's just that shock that created that irrational fear in her, and she would never sleep. Now, we talked about all these types of irrational fears. Then, how can we overcome this? How can we change this? Is it so easy? Right? So, there are 3 steps. One is to become emotionally aware of the memory. So, next time when you have an irrational fear, bring up that memory, bring up that fear, and access the emotion in your body. Access that memory in your body. And wherever you're experiencing it in your body, experience it and release it. Release it as if by breathing out or by taking it out into your palms and making a fist and releasing it, or whatever, or write it down and tear the paper down. Whatever works for you as a release, please do that. The second step you have to do is observe the thought, because thoughts create reality. We think I'm not doing any harm to this world, but most of the times the thoughts that we entertain or we encourage have this silent vibration, and every time we think of something that is either helpful or not helpful to us, we are going a little closer to manifesting that reality. So next time when you experience the thought, catch yourself and just ask these 4 questions. 1, is this true? 2, is this real and is it happening now? And then ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What is the best thing about this fear that my mind is or my body is trying to do for me? And the last question you have to ask, what is the worst that can happen if I don't fear this anymore? And observe what your mind and body will bring up for you. Just by doing this, you will be able to create awareness around this irrational fear, and you will be able to encourage your mind to make a consistent, conscious choice. And why you have to make a consistent, conscious choice? Because a thought repeated over and over and over becomes a reality. And every time you're entertaining this irrational fear of a pet or a person or an authority or some sleep, so every time you're entertaining this thought, you're creating a reality. And that reality is a vibration that affects not only you, but it also affects people around you, right? So observe the thought and make that consistent, conscious choice to create a new reality. And see if you can layer it with a new reality, a choice to view it differently. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're dominating the fear that was created in the first place, and you are rationally providing a solution to your mind and letting your mind know that you are safe and you do not have to be always in this protection mode. So the first step is to start looking at your mind as a separate being and your body as a separate being. And once you can start doing that, then you can start negotiating and have a conversation with your mind and body. And you will be surprised how they will respond to you. So to sum it up, there is no irrational fear because we are sticking to the age-old definition of survival. But in this day and age, artificial intelligence can be something that can create a fear of survival. Weapons, wars can be reasons for the fear of survival, right? Staircase can be a reason for the fear of survival. So step away from the age-old definition of survival, and anything that is limiting you is a rational fear for the mind. So irrational fear is really not irrational. It is very much rational and a creation of your mind and body to protect you. Then second, when you're experiencing something, start becoming aware of the fear. Instead of brushing it aside, observe the fear. The third, make an effort to choose your response by those 4 questions. Is it real and is it true? What am I afraid of? What's the best thing about holding on to the fear? And what is the worst that will happen if I let go of this fear? By doing this, you will be able to step into awareness, observation, and create the gap between the experience and your response. That will help you to step into facing the fear, so you will be more in a caution mode than a fear mode. All right, so that's from me to you today, and have a great day, great evening wherever you are. And tomorrow I'll be flying, so as I'm speaking to you right now, or as you're listening to me right now, I'm flying to UK, and I'll be in touch with you very soon. Love you and take care. Bye bye.